Yeah, so I know there's several people who are new, so welcome. And you'll be thoroughly lost, but so will all the old people. So don't worry about it. No, seriously. We'll all be learning things, and things will make sense according to where we're at. Yeah. So teachings are kind of designed that way, that people interpret them very differently at different times in their lives, and different people interpret things differently, and so everybody benefits in one way or another. So I hope you enjoy this beautiful place while you're here. And I was just thinking that, with a retreat on forgiveness, that everybody's probably come with, maybe, with specific situations they're thinking of where they really want to work on forgiveness of a specific person or a specific situation. So you may have, come with something like that you really want to work on. And then it's so funny how when you're with a group, you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to this monastery. It's going to be peaceful and quiet. I can finally resolve this issue that's been bothering me for the last 45 years. Some of you are only 30 years old, doesn't matter. Yeah, but I'm finally going to resolve it. And, and then you come here and there's somebody in the meditation hall who wiggles. And it's like, why are they wiggling? I'm trying to resolve this thing that's been going on for 35 years, and their wiggling is disturbing me. Does that happen? Why don't they just sit still? And so you get really kind of aggravated and tense, and then in the break time you think, okay, I've just got to chill out, because now I have this grudge I've been working on, plus this new thing with this person who wiggles. And it doesn't matter, they're in pain, They just need to sit still, like concrete. And so it's break time, I think I'll go take a walk. Then you go take a walk, and what happens? You come back with tics. And then you're sitting there in the meditation session. And you're wiggling, scratching your teeth. And then you try and sit still, and you feel one tick kind of going around like this. and you say, okay, I know it's a Buddhist practice to circumambulate, but he really doesn't need to circumambulate my waist. Yeah. And so you find that your mind is just tense and agitated and irritated by everything. Yeah? Do you ever have days like that? Yeah. Somebody says good morning, and it's like... So, just to be aware of that tendency. Because, if we're going to work on forgiveness, forgiveness is about letting go. So let's not build up more things while we're here, instead of practicing releasing things, okay? So, just be aware of that. But try and enjoy the beauty of the place, and the beauty of your own heart and mind, and the beauty of the community, and of being with a group of like-minded people who really cherish spiritual practice as you do, and who you can receive support from. They will support you in your practice, and then you will support them in their practice. Yeah. So focus on that, and then the mind is more peaceful. Okay, so we'll start with a little bit of silent meditation, so that you can hear each other wiggle, and so that we can calm our minds, and then afterwards I'll talk a little bit. Okay, so I'll lead you through body relaxation first, and then we will focus on our breath as the object of our meditation. And just keep your focus on the breath. The mind wants to wander off, and, you know, all these, now you're going to find so many imaginary tics. Yeah. Yeah, see, Tracy's starting already. But, you know, we'll be disturbed by an itch or a thought or a sound or something like that. But just notice that that's happening, but bring your attention back home to the breath. And let your mind rest on the breath and really take interest in what's happening as you're inhaling and exhaling. What's going on? You know, what are the different sensations? What are the what's happening in you as you're inhaling and exhaling? Okay? So let's start by feeling ourselves sitting here on the cushion, or sitting in the chair, but sitting up straight, our hands in our lap, the right on the left, the thumbs touching. And be inside your body, so to speak, and be completely aware that you're sitting here in this room with a group of people who support you in your spiritual endeavors, and in turn give your support to everybody here for their spiritual endeavors. And then be aware of sensations in your legs and your feet. If there's any tension, then let it go. Be aware of sensations in your belly and lower abdomen. And especially check if you store your tension in your belly. If your belly's tight, if you have butterflies. And so if there's any tension in your lower abdomen, then let that go too. And when you release the tension in your belly, then when you inhale, your belly goes out as the air fills you. Then be aware of sensations in your back, shoulders, arms, and chest. If your shoulders are tight, try lifting them up as high as you can towards your ears. Tuck your chin in a little bit. Hold it there for a moment. And then let your shoulders fall very quickly. Then be aware of sensations in your neck, head, face, and jaw. And just release any tension that might be there. For example, if your jaw is clenched, relax it. If your facial muscles are tense, let that go. And then be aware of your body and your posture as a whole once more. And feel how your sitting is very firm, but it's also without any tension. So firmness and relaxation can go together. And it's the same in our mind. Our mind can be focused or firm, but also relaxed and open. And then bring your attention to the breath, letting your breathing process be normal and natural without forcing your breath. And place your attention either at the upper lip and the nostrils, and be aware of the sensation of the air passing there. Or place your attention at your belly and be aware of the rise and fall of your belly as you inhale and exhale. So choose one of those two places and keep your attention there. And then just be mindful of your breath. Be aware of what's happening with each inhalation and exhalation. And if a distraction comes, notice it. Don't run off with it, but come back home to your breath. And so we'll have some time of silence to do this. take a moment and cultivate our motivation. And think that we will listen to the Dharma and share in the Dharma, so that we can open our hearts and minds, cultivate love, compassion, and wisdom. And to do this for the benefit of all living beings, ourselves and all others. And to do it for a long-term, really high and noble purpose. The freedom from misery of each and every living being, and the development of every living being's full spiritual potential. And so with progressing along the path and doing that as our main motivation, then we'll listen and learn together this weekend. Take a moment and cultivate that motivation. Okay. So, this weekend's going to be about forgiveness. And to forgive, that means that there's got to be some anger. Because you can't forgive unless we're holding a grudge. And grudges are based on anger. Okay. So the way I think of forgiveness is simply releasing our anger about a situation. Now, it's putting down our anger. Doesn't mean what the other person did was okay. It, doesn't mean forget what they did. It doesn't mean trust them the same way we used to. It simply means letting go of our anger. So we have to look at our anger. Yeah, in order to forgive, we have to look at our anger. So I'm going to talk a little bit about anger and how anger develops, so we can get an idea of that. The best way to forgive is to avoid the anger to start with. Yeah. So, if we can train our minds well in new ways of seeing the world, then our mind won't get so angry in the first place, and then we'll have less to forgive. Now, did you notice there? I said our mind won't get so angry in the first place, so we'll have less to forgive. I didn't say, so then we'll meet fewer obnoxious people who harm us, so we'll have less to forgive. I didn't say that. Yeah, because when are we going to meet fewer obnoxious people who harm us? Yeah. Yeah. So this is getting into the fact that we see harm. We see our own unhappiness as coming from outside of us. Why am I angry? Because there's these obnoxious people. So to avoid having to forgive, then I have to avoid getting angry, so I have to avoid meeting obnoxious people. Now, where are you going to go where you're not going to meet any obnoxious people? You may say, well, that's why the great yogis went up into the caves. They didn't have to meet any obnoxious people up there. Well, they did, and the obnoxious person they had to meet was themselves. Because, unfortunately, that one obnoxious person, ourself, follows us around everywhere. Yeah. And so what I'm getting at is, as long as our mind has the seed of anger in it, we will find somebody to get mad at. Yeah. It doesn't matter what other people do. If we have that seed of anger in us, we will find somebody who does something objectionable. That doesn't mean that we go sniffing them out, searching them out, unconsciously being attracted to obnoxious people. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that with that seed of anger, our mind will paint stories on anybody and everybody who happens to come into our scope of awareness. What do you think? Yeah. Now your mind might say, oh, but there's some people I really love. I'm not going to project and paint bad stuff on them. Oh, yeah? You've never had a fight with your loved ones? You've never been furious with them? In fact, sometimes those might be the people you come here to work on forgiving, are the people you care about the most, because those are the ones you get angriest at. Okay? So the source of the difficulty is not what other people say and do. The source of the difficulty is us having this proclivity towards anger. So what is this proclivity towards anger based on? Okay? There's a whole psychological method, or psychological thing that's going on. Okay, why do we get angry? Because our desires and needs are not getting fulfilled. Okay? We want something, we need something, we desire something, we feel entitled to something, and we're not getting what we want. Yeah? Does that lie behind when you get angry? You know, so it's not necessarily that you aren't getting the $1,000 that you want, but, you know, the person isn't expressing their love for you the way you want them to express their love to you. And so you think they don't love you. Mm-hmm. Or somebody is, you know, not being what you want them to be, because you clearly know what's best for them in their life. Okay, and they're not following our script. That happens a lot with children and everybody else in the family, basically. Okay, so it's, you know, we're not getting what we want, either, you know, a physical object or some emotional need that, you know, or a need to be recognized and appreciated at work, let's say. Somebody who appreciates what we do, and, you know, we seek some recognition or some improvement in our status, or we need somebody to boost our self-confidence, or whatever it is, but we're not getting what we want. Mm-hmm. Now, in Buddhism, we talk about samsara being this wheel of constantly recurring difficulties. Okay? And so as long as we have a mind with attachment, a mind with craving, then things are not going to, we're not going to get what we want. Okay. In other words, okay, when we are exaggerating the good qualities of someone or something, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment, disillusionment, and anger when we can't get that object or person or status or whatever it is. Okay? So when our mind is clinging, when our mind is craving, and craving, clinging, attachment, they're all based on exaggerating good qualities, thinking that something outside of ourselves is going to fulfill our need. Okay? So based on that kind of assumption, that kind of worldview, then of course anger is going to follow. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? You may or may not agree. Because lots of times, what's very difficult is anger is something to be, we can recognize the disadvantages of rather easily, compared to seeing the disadvantages of craving and clinging. Because very often with craving and clinging and attachment and desire, we feel a certain sense of happiness. We feel that what we want is getting fulfilled. And so then when somebody tells us that that is all based on exaggerating the good qualities of someone or something, we get mad because we don't agree with that worldview. You know, this person is really, truly, from their own side, the most wonderful person in the world who's going to make me happy and fulfill all my needs. That's the way we see the situation. Or if I only got this promotion, then my need for feeling successful, for being recognized, for feeling competent is going to be fulfilled. That's not an exaggeration. I need this promotion or acknowledgement in my work. Okay? So we have our mind gets very tight, and we want these things, and they're external things, and we're completely convinced that if we get them, that's what will satisfy the feeling of emptiness within us. Okay? So we run after those things. We try and arrange the world so we get those things. Yeah. And then what I'm asking is, let's stop and pause a minute and say, well, sometimes I've succeeded in getting those things or having those relationships. And has it brought me everlasting happiness? You've gotten the promotion, you had the love affair, you got the house, whatever it was. Did it bring you everlasting happiness? If it did, you would still be with that person or object or situation. You wouldn't have come here for this weekend because you would have already attained everlasting happiness. Okay? So getting those things may bring us some degree of happiness, but it's certainly not everlasting happiness. Why? Well, because sometimes when we get what we want, it's not as good as we thought it was going to be. When I was in high school, I had a friend who wanted a Porsche so bad. Oh, he would have died to have a Porsche. And he tried to talk his parents into it. Of course, they wouldn't do it. He didn't have enough money himself to buy it. He was just, I've got to have a Porsche, And we would ride to Sunday school together every Sunday. And that's all I heard, going there and coming back, was, I got to have a Porsche. Well, not all I heard. Sometimes we were criticizing our Sunday school teacher, too. But, it was very interesting because after we graduated high school, some years went by, and I met him again, and he had gotten his Porsche, and he had also sold his Porsche. And he was telling me, it was like he was so happy when he got it, and then, that happiness just didn't last very long. So this is the difficulty with seeking happiness from external things. Instead of finding happiness inside and developing contentment in our own heart, developing satisfaction in our own heart, when we're looking for external things, there's always going to be disappointment and disillusionment, or separation from what we liked. Yeah. Maybe you never get to the point of being disillusioned or disappointed, but the other person dies, and then you're separated. Okay? Or the relationship runs up into bumps, and you separate. Or whatever it is, okay? So, the point is that with forgiveness, we're letting go of anger. Anger comes about based on clinging and attachment to external things. So the more clinging and attachment we have, we're not only going to have more dissatisfaction when we can't get it, but we're going to have more anger when it doesn't turn out to be what we wanted. Or more anger when we're separated from it. Or more depression when we're separated from it. Okay? Now let's keep investigating here. Behind the anger was the attachment. What's behind the attachment? What's the attachment based on? Okay. Well, there's two main things here that the attachment is based on. One is the assumption that I'm the most important person in the world, and I should always be happy, and the world should make me happy. Do you have that assumption somewhere inside of you? Come on, fess up. We're all in the same boat. Yeah. This assumption is called the self-centered thought. Yeah. The self-centered thought, or self-absorption, self-preoccupation, everything revolving around me. Why? Because I am clearly the most important person in the world. And all my attachments, I should be able to fulfill them. I should be able to get everything I want, when I want it. Okay? So the slogan of the self-centered mind is, I want what I want when I want it. Okay? So there's that kind of background, that's the Muzak of our life. The background, of how our mind is working is, I'm the most important one. I deserve happiness. The world owes it to me. Now you might say, well, no, that's not how I feel. Actually, I feel like I'm totally undeserving and I'm a failure and the world doesn't owe me anything. In fact, I owe the world something because I'm so guilty and full of shame and everything like that. Okay. So you might say, well, no, I don't have a problem with self-centeredness because, I don't deserve happiness because I'm fundamentally flawed. Okay. Now, all that kind of assumption, who is that talking about? Yeah. Who's the center of all of that? Yeah, me. Me. I'm flawed. I'm full of shame. I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. I'm guilty. I owe the world something. Okay. That's how we got ay, 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 you know. It's just I. You know. So all this self-deprecation and shame and guilt is just as self-centered as I want and I've got to have and the world owes it to me. And you'll find in your mind that we go back and forth between these two things. Why do we feel unworthy? Because there's the flip side that the world owes us something and it's not giving us what we want. Why isn't it giving us what we want? Because we're fundamentally flawed. Why am I fundamentally flawed? Because the world doesn't understand me and that I'm the most important one. Do you see? Do you see the psychological method? Yeah. Well, not method, psychological circus. Yeah. Of going back and forth. But whatever it is, it's all about me. Yeah. All about me. So that's one of the things that underlies the attachment. And that self-preoccupied thought is such a huge cause of our misery. You know, because it makes us so self-sensitive to every small thing that happens in the world. Everything is interpreted in terms of me. Yeah? And that just drives us crazy, that habit we have of I'm the most important one. That mind seems to be our friend, saying, follow me and I'll lead you to happiness. And we follow our self-centered thought. But it's a big liar and a big deceiver because it actually makes us so super sensitive, so anything anybody does isn't good enough because we deserve more and better. Or, on the contrary, anything we do isn't good enough because if we can't be the best, we're the worst, but somehow we stick out and we're special. Okay? So this self-centered thought, you know, that just dwells on me all the time is a big pest. And it's not who we are. It's not an inherent, intrinsic part of us. It's just one kind of attitude that happens to be deeply rooted that makes a lot of noise. But it isn't who we are. And it's something that can be eliminated, that can be counteracted. Okay? So from a Buddhist viewpoint, we are not inherently selfish. We don't look at human beings as our whole purpose is to get our genes into the gene pool. Yeah, that's kind of the epitome of selfishness, isn't it? It's based on thinking, I am my body, which is one wrong view. I am my body. And my genes have to get into the gene pool. For what reason? Why are my genes so special? They don't even belong to me. They belong to my parents. They belong to my ancestors. My genes are not so special. Okay? So we don't, you know, from a Buddhist worldview, we don't have that thing that we're all competing, for the epitome of selfishness to make our genes rule the world. Yeah. But instead, we say that we have a higher purpose in our life, to develop infinite love and compassion that extends to all beings, to know the nature of reality, to develop our potential. That's a much nicer goal in life than to get your genes into the gene pool, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I find that always puzzling. What's so special about my genes? I can't even see my genes. Yeah. Okay, so that self-centeredness lies behind the attachment. Another one of the thoughts that lie behind the attachment is just this grasping that there's a real, truly existent, concrete me. Okay, so this is what we call self-grasping or I-grasping or ignorance. The idea that there's a real, concrete person somewhere in here, that is really me, that's not going to disappear, that, continues, that definitely exists. Okay? Do you have that feeling of a real you? Yeah. When we say the word I, we don't think of the word I as just a label. When we say the word I mean, we really resonate with that word. We even capitalize it in our language. I. One letter, capitalized, standing alone. That's our idea of ourselves, isn't it? We're one person, capitalized, concretely existent, standing alone, independent of the world. Me. Okay? And that's a very innate feeling we have in ourselves. Yeah. The difficulty is that such a person doesn't exist. Or rather, I should say, the relief, the good news is that such a person doesn't exist. Because if there were this concrete, real, truly existent, independent me, then boy, wouldn't things be kind of miserable and tight? Yeah, think about it. When you look at life through this thing of there's a concrete me, then your whole view of life is distorted by that. Because everything gets viewed in terms of how it relates to me. And the whole purpose becomes how I can get happiness, how I can be free of suffering. Because there's this concrete me that's always screaming out for something. But it's this same concrete idea of me that makes us feel alienated and cut off from everybody else. Isn't it? I'm separate, I'm independent. So in one way we like that. I'm separate, I'm independent, I'm an American, and I'm going to pull myself up by my own bootstraps, or at least by my own high heels. But I'm independent. But then there's a flip side to that, which is I'm lonely, and I'm alienated, and I can't connect, because I'm isolated. Okay? And that causes a lot of pain. So this whole idea of this concrete self is actually a distortion. If we search to try and find what is that concrete self, it becomes very difficult to identify anything. Yeah. Are we our body? If you took this body apart, are you going to find yourself? Are you your eyeballs? Yeah. If somebody's brain is out there on the table, do you say, "Hi, Joe"? Is the brain the person? Is the nervous system the person? Yeah. We can't find ourselves within our body. So then we say, well, maybe I'm my mind. But the thing is, our mind has many different aspects to it. Are we the mind that's awake or the mind that's sleepy? The happy mind or the upset mind? The drowsy mind? The lazy mind? The joyful mind? Are we the mind that sees visual objects or the mind that hears sounds or the mind that thinks? Maybe I'm the mind that thinks, but which thought? Which thought is me? Maybe just the thought me is me. When you start searching and you're looking for what is me, you really search. The most I can get down to is the thought me must be me. But what is that thought me? It's just a thought. And I am certainly not a thought. I am real. Okay. But when we really search for, an independent me that we can find, we don't find it. Okay? So what this means, the anger based on the clinging and attachment, based on the self-centeredness and the self-grasping. But the self-grasping is a mistaken attitude. It's holding on to a concrete, independent person that doesn't exist. The self-centered thought is also incorrect because, unfortunately, I'm not the center of the universe. So if we can overcome the self-centeredness and the self-grasping, which we can, because they're both distorted, since they are the ground upon which craving, clinging, and attachment exist, if we take that ground away, the craving, clinging, and attachment disintegrates. It can't stand. And if we don't have craving, clinging, attachment, we don't have anger. If we don't have anger, then we don't have to forgive anybody. Okay? So the reason I'm explaining all of this is so that we have an idea of how anger works and how anger is based on false assumptions, false conceptions and perceptions. Yeah, it's very important to understand that our anger is not perceiving reality, that it really is based on exaggeration. Because if we don't understand that, then one part of our mind is always going to hold on to our anger, thinking, I'm right. I deserve X, Y, and Z. And as long as we are holding on to that, really forgiving, really releasing the anger is going to be very, very difficult. Because one part of our mind is saying, my anger hurts so much, I want to let go of it. And the other part of the mind is saying, but they did this to me. And I don't deserve that. And they need to apologize. And they need to X, Y, and Z. And I need this. And, and so that makes it very difficult to forgive, doesn't it? Because our anger is just very entrenched. Yeah. And what's interesting with that kind of anger is that we've given our power away. They've done that to me. I'm a victim. A victim has no power. Yeah. They did that awful thing to me, poor, innocent, sweet, benevolent, unassuming me. Why would anybody do that to me? It's so unfair. It's so awful. I don't deserve that. But they did that to me, and who in the world do they think they are? And so we flip-flop from anger and vengeance to self-pity. Back and forth. You do that? You go back and forth between anger and self-pity? I'm the victim, they did this to me, I'm hopeless, I'm helpless, I can't do anything. They have to change for the situation to get better, and they're never going to change. And that's why I'm so angry, and I'm going to get my revenge and make them see that they're wrong and they've got to change. But actually, I wish they would just come groveling on the ground and apologize because I hurt so much. But those idiots, who in the world do they think they are? Back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. When you really think about it, it's pretty funny. Yeah. The first time you hear about it, it's alarming. And you're not quite sure it's true. But think about it a little bit. Yeah, think about it. And watch how your mind works. And sometimes when we watch how our mind works, I mean, we really have to laugh. Because our mind, sometimes the way our mind puts 2 and 2 together to equal 6.25 is hilarious, you know. And it always comes out with, I'm the star of the show. I'm either the best one or the worst one. So maybe we can have a little bit of discussion now, or questions.
Sometimes I get a little bit confused about the difference between, I mean, because it seems sort of apparent the difference between this self-grasping I and our Buddha nature. And sometimes it's hard for me to get those, like it seems really obvious, but it's also a little difficult for me to understand the difference between the two.
Okay, so the difference between the self-grasping I and the Buddha nature. Okay, so just to explain a little bit what Buddha nature means. Buddha nature is our potential to become a fully enlightened being. There's 2 forms of Buddha nature. One is the emptiness of inherent existence of our mind, the fact that our mind is not an independent entity with an intrinsic nature. And the second aspect of Buddha nature is all the conventional things that can be qualities that we have, like love and compassion and concentration and things like that, qualities we have now that can be increased and can continue on until we attain full awakening. Okay. Now, when we first hear Buddha nature and we hear, oh, there's something good inside of me, the potential to become a Buddha, then our mind that likes to concretize everything concretizes Buddha nature. Yeah. And now there's a real, truly existent good me inside. Yeah. So I think that's where you're getting confused. Okay. But when I described Buddha nature, remember one aspect of it was the lack of true existence? Yeah? So that means that there's no truly existent good person. And there's no truly existent pure mind. Yeah. What it's meaning is that everything exists dependently. So don't make Buddha nature into a new version of the soul or the new version of the self, because Buddha nature is not something concrete like that. Okay? This has been a discussion for centuries within Buddhism. It's not a new thing. Yeah. Yeah.
You said what I might find difficult is that if, because in the past I repressed anger, and how I think I learned how to use access that was to be able to access more of the flip side of that, which is allowing myself to feel the pain of an experience. Then I think what may happen sometimes is that there's a part of my mind that knows it needs to create the space to let the experience be there. But then the emotion is so flooding that it just doesn't stay useful. So then I lately, which one I kind of just have to take the whole thing out and almost say that I've seen it, but then go into more positive, because it just saves yourself pity sometimes. Or sometimes there's just actual, I think there's a genuine sadness about the suffering in the world. But then when the emotion gets so strong, everything gets hit.
Okay.
Sometimes I fix the whole thing out then.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what you're saying is, for a long time you didn't feel the anger, you repressed it, and because it's kind of scary to feel the feelings, but unsafe.
It's unsafe for my growing up to have the anger.
Yeah. Okay. So it's unsafe, because if you have the anger, you might act out the anger and you might get into trouble. So better just to stuff it all down, which meant stuffing down the hurt. Yeah, because hurt often lies behind anger. And so now as an adult, trying to take the cap off of that, and, the hurt comes, and so does the anger, and sometimes it just seems to totally flood the mind, and you can't surface again from it. It just, floods you and covers you, and you get so caught in the hurt and the pain, that you can't get out. And so you're saying sometimes at that moment you just throw the whole thing out. Okay? So I think there's different ways to work with this at different times. I think, when you're watching the hurt and you're watching the anger, try and step back a minute and just feel it as a neutral observer. Not like you're dissociating. Don't dissociate. But it's just, okay, hurt, be aware of how the hurt feels. And ask yourself, why do I call this hurt? Or what does the anger feel like? And why, on what basis do I call this anger? So you're observing it without repressing it, but without sitting in the middle of it either and letting it flood over you. Okay? So that's one way. Sometimes in working with my anger, I get, that might happen with the hurt and the anger, and then at a certain, and it's just like all really intense, and then at a certain point I go, this is stupid. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my mind is making up this whole ridiculous drama that is just driving me nuts. And then I do the same thing. I just say, toss it out. Yeah? And then you can turn and laugh at yourself. Yeah? And you can see very clearly at that point how the mind is just making up this whole thing. Because whatever it was that happened is no longer happening. So if we're sitting here feeling hurt and angry, it's not because somebody else is doing something. It's because our mind is proliferating. Yeah? And then you laugh and you throw it out. Yeah? And I think, it's really good if we can get to that kind of point in our practice. You don't want to laugh at it. You have to get to the right point where you can laugh at it, where your laughing doesn't become suppressing it, but where you really look at it and you say, this is just batty, And it's so batty that it's funny. Yeah. How would you apply this to the state? Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we found really that we don't go through the grief process, but I think that's sort of all the rest.
Okay. So you're asking how anger relates to the grief process and getting to acceptance. Okay. Just one comment on how the grief process has been laid out. I think that's a very general description, and that people should not feel that they have to go through every stage of the grief process. Because I've had people come to me and say, I'm doing something wrong because I didn't go through all these stages in the grief process. And I said, no, you aren't. You're just grieving in your own way. So I'm saying this so that people don't feel locked into some process that they think they need to go through. What I think grief is adjusting to a change that we didn't want. Yeah, if we just looked at grief that way, it's adjusting to a change that we didn't want. Yeah, that we had no control over. And I think what's happening with grief is that we are longing for a future that's not going to be. We're not longing for the past because the past is over. Yeah, I don't think we're grieving the past because, let's say in the death of a person, we were with that person, we enjoyed that person, That was the past experience. It's something to rejoice at. We're not grieving the past. Not like you want to go back in time. Okay. But I think what's happening is we had an idea of what the future's going to be, and now we have to change our idea of the future. And it wasn't we didn't want this change, yeah. And it came, yeah, undesired change. Maybe we knew it was coming, maybe it was sudden, okay? But we had an idea of what the future's going to be, and now we have to accept that the future's not going to be the way we thought it was going to be. Yeah. And so anger can come in that process because we want a certain future and it's not going to happen. Anger can come in the grieving process in all sorts of ways. We get angry at the other person for dying as if they could control it. Yeah. Or we get angry at somebody for leaving us. We'll get into that later as the weekend progresses. Okay? But I really think the grief is a lot on the future, that we're grieving a future that we're not going to have. But when you look at it, the future doesn't exist now. So we're grieving for something that doesn't exist yet, and that won't exist in the way we had thought it was going to exist. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? Yeah? We're grieving for something that's not going to be. So what I think can be very helpful is come back to the present. Take our mind out of the future, out of grieving for the future that's not going to happen, and come back to the present. Yeah. And you sit here and you're sitting with a group of wonderful people in a beautiful place. And can we open our hearts to the people that we're with right now and let those people in our hearts, instead of telling ourselves, I can only be happy when I'm with this one person. Yeah, if we can release that thought, if I can only be happy with this one person, then we find that there's a lot of love in our hearts that we can share with many people, and that doesn't mean we're being disloyal to that one person who died, because love is not a fixed pie that if you give it to one person, you don't have any left to give to somebody else. I was at a funeral one time. Actually, I was asked to, I was the clergy, put it that way, at the funeral. And the couple, they were in their mid-30s. He had just died of cancer, and they had 3 little kids. And she was just remarkable the whole way she did it. And he was too. I mean, before he died, he wrote letters to his children for them to read when they became older, telling his kids what he had learned from life. They're beautiful letters, yeah. And they talked very freely and openly about death. They knew how he wanted it to be when he died, and that, he wanted to die at home, and he did. And at the funeral, or not the funeral, the memorial service, she came up and was speaking, and her face was glowing, and she just said, her husband's name was John, and she said, John taught me to love, and all that love I had felt for him, now I want to really share with the world. It was incredible to watch this, and she really meant it. She wasn't just painting something on. It was amazing. Yeah? And so I look at that and think, wow, that to appreciate the existence of somebody in our life, somebody that we shared with, who taught us a lot, who helped us and benefited us, and whom we in turn loved and cared about and benefited. And to rejoice that that connection happened and how fortunate we were to have that at all in our lives. And recognizing that it's all transient and there's no way to hold on to it forever. But how fortunate we were to have that in the first place. And then take all the love and everything we learned from that and fill our heart and open our heart and extend it to everybody. Yeah? So I think that's possible. I mean, I've seen it. So I think, there's time for one more question. Somebody has something? Yeah?
It's kind of an in-between issue, and I think it probably falls more in the grieving process. But it's like the anger just became stupid, abuse, so I quit that. I mean, really, same thing. It's funny when you look at it. But there's so much past anger. I had a hard life with a lot of negative things going on during my dark ages, where I was really a screaming banshee. I was hurting people, intentionally hurting people. And I have regret and remorse for having done that. And it's like I can sit and do Russian stuff for forever, but I still have this like it's cloud in my mind that still exists where there was negative behavior that was so bad, caused by anger.
Mhm.
So maybe that's more like grief, I don't know.
Okay. So you're talking when there's such a feeling of regret or
Yes,
or
of
even
course.
remorse, yeah, for acting out of anger and hurting other people.
And what it did karmically to my life.
Yeah, what the effect of the anger
Yes.
was on your life.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm trying to undo that.
yeah, yeah. And how your anger caused so much suffering, not only in others' life, but your own life. Yeah. And so having regret for all of that, but being able to put it down without feeling guilty. You know, let go of the guilt. Yeah. So this is, in a way, anger at oneself, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Anger at oneself. Or, well, I think there's a difference between regret and anger at oneself. Maybe this is what we're getting into. Yeah. Because when our regret tends towards the anger at oneself, then it becomes very concrete. I was so angry in the past. I did all these awful things. How could I have done that? This was really bad what I did. I'm so guilty. I'm mad at myself for behaving that way. Okay? That's falling into the side of self-deprecation. Okay? That's falling into the side of exaggerating. And that, too, is based on that concrete I, isn't it? There's a concrete I who blew the whole thing. Okay? And so to realize, no, there's no concrete I. There's no concrete I. And we may have made mistakes and done misdeeds, but that doesn't mean we have to hate ourselves for it. Okay? There's this old kind of Judaic Christian thing of, if the worse I feel, the more I'm atoning for how I harmed others. You know that one? If I can feel really miserable and guilty and lousy, then somehow I'm making up for what I caused to others. There's that kind of way of thinking. Is that true? Does feeling awful yourself make up for the pain you cause to other people?
Well, it hurts, the better it is for you.
That's the way that mind is thinking. The more it hurts, the better it is for me. But is that true? Is that reasonable? That's nuts, isn't it? Yeah. So I think we need to offer ourselves some compassion. And one thing that I think is very helpful in those circumstances is that person who was so angry and did those misdeeds. You understand that person well because you used to be her. But you're not her now. You're a much more mature person, compassionate person now. Can you have a conversation with her and offer her some empathy and some compassion and some kindness because you understand her pain? Yeah.
I do see more how the self-centered mind, it's this like blank spot, you know, when you take away a piece out of the picture, there's a hole.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's cold. I'm no longer angry to the people who, you know, they were much to blame too, but I don't care. It's like I just see as they've aged, that they're facing aging, sickness, and death just staying alone.
Yeah.
And none of it makes any difference. They followed career paths that they stepped on me to do. No problem, you know. They're not happy. And you know, through all of that, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been here for a long time. And it's really, it's so incredible. how they work out, because there's a shadow that goes over
This shadow of, at some point, I really am the evil one.
Not that, but I don't feel it's clear. I'll think that it's purified.
Yeah, yeah. But you have to just take that and really say, look, there's, you know, offer yourself some compassion in the process. I'm not the person I was before. I understand that person. I can offer her some kindness and some empathy. Yeah, I can't say what she did was good, but I can certainly understand it and offer some kindness and compassion. Knowing that I'm a different person now. Yeah. So that burden, I don't have to hang on to that burden. Yeah. Yeah. Let go.